is the again, I watched the full thing, the most the most likely concern, or the concern that I understand the most, that she brings up here, is just that the potential legal challenge by the Republican Party, which, all as she says, you can guarantee that they are going to challenge this in some way. And because even if these challenges don't make sense, we've seen Republican judges side with Trump even when it doesn't make sense. We've seen Supreme Court rulings this year that don't make any legal sense. But these are seats held by Trump appointees, and they side with the most conservative position. So there's this worry here. Now, it's unfortunate that politics even has to operate this way, where you're so concerned about the lack of legitimacy about what the courts may do because of a Republican challenge. But that's the situation that Americans are currently in, and I can understand why this would be a concern. That said, you could argue, well, if they're going to challenge that, then they could challenge Biden anyways. What if he wins the election and they find a way to challenge that? Yes, but there's more of a legal gray area here when it's somebody who's not yet on the ticket. And there's a concern, especially as it applies to Ohio, that I cut it out of this video, but she brings up a concern about this legal challenge as it applies to Ohio that potentially could be applied to other states. So I understand this concern the most. The issue is, or I should say her issue is that, this concern would go away if there were people in the room who had this mapped out. And so far from the discussions that she's been in, nobody actually knows the process. No one actually has mapped out how they may be challenged, what the response to those challenges may be. And that's what's concerning to her.
If you think that there is consensus among the people who want Joe Biden to leave, that they will support Kamala, Vice President Harris, you would be mistaken. And I'm going to say that because if they're going to come out and say all their little things on background off the record, but they're not going to be fully honest, I'm going to be honest for them. I'm in these rooms. I see what they say in conversations. A lot of them are not just interested in removing the president. They are interested in removing the whole ticket.
This also goes, I think, to the potential legal challenge. If it's Kamala Harris replacing Biden, I think there's less of a worry there because she's already on the ticket. She is the vice president. He'd likely be stepping down over health reasons. It's harder to challenge that, even though I'm sure they would probably try. If it's a completely new ticket and there was no actual primary process to put them in place, and it's all done at the convention, sure, it may look fine on paper, but that opens up the challenge. And in addition to that, you then have essentially just big donors choosing who they think is best for them to go on the ticket. And Joe Biden, for his many faults, especially over the past year or so, as it applies to Israel, he has been a incredibly strong working class president in terms of labor, in terms of the NLRB specifically. Now, you may even want to argue against that and say, well, it's not him, it's who he put there. Sure, fine, it's who he put there. It's the NLRB has been fantastic under Joe Biden. Is his replacement that isn't Kamala Harris, are they going to have that same agenda, especially if big donors are choosing that person? Unlikely. Of course, those discussions, I think, should happen past November. I think the focus right now should be avoiding Donald Trump, but it's still worth thinking about who is behind these decisions.
I'm not here to tell you that if Joe Biden is the nominee, he's definitely going to win. But because I don't think if anybody is the nominee, we're definitely going to win. I can also tell you that I have stood up in rooms with all of these people, and I have said, game out your actual plan for me. Game it out. Have you looked in, what are the risks of this going to the Supreme Court? Like, what are these things, right? And I'm not here to like assert any major thing. If y'all want to come with the receipts in the comments, that's fine. But what I can tell you is that I have stood up in rooms of folks making these decisions, and I have raised these questions, and no one had an answer for me. Maybe they have an answer now. I don't know. No one's gotten back to me. But hello? Like, nobody responded. Nobody has responded to me. And I'm not talking about some pundit with a column in a newspaper saying theoretically it's possible. I'm talking about the lawyers. I'm talking about the legislatures. I'm not talking about here's how an open convention would go down. I'm talking about people whose job it is to look at the letter of the law and the letter of many different states' state laws and take a look at this, okay?
I think a lot of us having these conversations about replacing Joe Biden just sort of, and it's important to catch ourselves here, just incorrectly assume that the party knows what they're doing, that they have their shit together, that they have mapped this out, that they are aware of potential legal challenges or the legality of doing this in various states, especially as it applies to swing states. We just assume this is all because these are professionals. If they're talking about this, they must have a plan. It sounds like they don't. This is it. It sounds like they know as much as we do. So I completely understand this worry. Like this worry, especially of there has not been a plan. She's in these rooms, these backdoor rooms, and no one has mapped this out properly. So if somebody were to map this out properly for her and others, I think it would help to alleviate some of those concerns. But that hasn't happened. So it makes total sense why someone who is concerned about the details and concerned about a Supreme Court challenge would be concerned about this process.
There is no safe option. There's no safe option. And I think given the stakes of this moment, we all want to run to safety and we want to run to the sure thing. And I think it's important to operate with integrity. If you 10,000% are super convinced that the candidate or the president cannot beat Donald Trump, then like do what you think is in your good conscience. But I have not seen a scenario, an alternative scenario that I feel does not set us up for enormous peril. People think this election is in November. The convention is in 4 weeks, and early ballots go out. The first early ballots in this country go out 4 weeks after that. This election is not in November. It's in September. It's in the end of September. It's in early October. And so we're almost in August. So I think we need to sit with the stakes, with the reality. And if you come to the same conclusion, fine. But I'm not seeing enough discussion. And I also don't want people to take for granted that the people in these rooms, like totally for sure 10,000% have a plan. Maybe somebody does and they're not sharing it. That's also a possibility. What I'm saying is like the mechanisms by which this decision is being made is concerning me. And when I'm talking to folks in rooms, I hear my donor this, my donor that. Those are the inputs that I am hearing reflected by my colleagues. It's not my voters this, my voters that. Every once in a blue moon. But from what I am hearing, my inputs a lot is donor, donor, donor. 2 million, like there was like some, it's like big donors are saying this, big donors are saying that, big donors, like I could give 2 damns about what a bunch of rich people think. What I care about is about what the working class thinks.
I will say